Rain hammered the porch roof the night Marlene Cobb found a bag of money sitting on her welcome mat. She'd only stepped outside to check the mail, wrapped in the same gray cardigan she'd worn since her husband passed. And there it was, a soaked paper grocery bag, leaning against her door like it belonged there. Cash spilled out the top. Hundreds, so many hundreds. Her hand flew to her mouth. A note was tucked inside, the ink already bleeding from the wet. For you, when life feels too heavy. A friend. She looked up, heart slamming, and saw him. A man in a dark hoodie, standing motionless at the edge of her yard. Rain pouring off him like he didn't feel it. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just watched her. Then he turned and walked into the storm. Marlene had $11 in her checking account. Her water heater had died 2 weeks earlier. Her son's asthma medication was due for refill, and she'd already decided he'd have to wait. She was a hospital janitor, 34 years old, working double shifts to keep a roof over 2 heads. She had nothing left to give the world, and the world had just handed her a bag of money on a doorstep. She didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table counting it 3 times. $4,200. Enough to change everything. Enough to feel like a trap. Because good things didn't happen to people like her. Not without a catch. The next morning, she almost called the police. Her thumb hovered over the number. But something stopped her, the handwriting on that note. Careful. Deliberate. Like someone who'd thought hard about every word. She decided to find him first. If this story is touching you the way it's touching me, and if you still believe there's kindness left in strangers, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happens next will remind you why that belief matters. 3 streets over, at the corner store, the clerk recognized her description immediately. Hooded guy, quiet, keeps to himself. That's Daniel. Sleeps behind the laundromat some nights. Used to come in here buying day-old bread. Used to. Haven't seen him in about a week, the clerk added, and something cold moved through Marlene's chest. She spent her lunch break walking behind the laundromat, calling his name into empty alleys. Nothing. Just a flattened cardboard box and a soda can rusting in the gutter. That's when she remembered something small. Something she'd nearly forgotten. 8 months earlier, in the dead of a January freeze, she'd found a man collapsed near the hospital's loading dock, shivering, barely conscious. She hadn't thought twice. She'd given him her own coat, walked him inside, made sure the nurses got him warm and fed before her shift even started. She never learned his name. She never expected to see him again. She hadn't connected it. Not until now. Was that Daniel? 2 days later, a police cruiser pulled up outside her house. Her stomach dropped. This was it, she thought, the catch she'd been dreading. But the officer who stepped out wasn't there to arrest her. He was there to ask about Daniel Reyes. Turned out Daniel wasn't just a man who slept behind a laundromat. He'd once been a decorated army medic, discharged after a spinal injury left him unable to work the only job he'd ever loved. No family left to catch him when he fell. The system had, in its quiet and thorough way, forgotten him completely. But here's what nobody knew. Daniel had been secretly collecting donation money for months. Money raised online by strangers who'd heard scraps of his story from a veterans outreach page. And instead of using it to save himself, he'd been searching for someone who needed it more. He'd remembered the janitor who gave a stranger her coat in the freezing dark and never asked his name. The officer's next words nearly buckled Marlene's knees. Daniel had collapsed again 3 nights ago, this time from exposure, just blocks from her home. He was alive, barely. In the ICU, unconscious, no visitors, no family listed. Marlene didn't hesitate. She walked straight into that hospital in her work uniform and refused to leave the waiting room. Doctors told her only family could see him. She told them she was the only family he had left. For 6 days she came every evening after her shift, sitting beside a stranger who had once been a stranger to her too, holding a hand that had once left a bag of hope on her porch. On the 7th night, his eyes opened. He didn't recognize her face right away. But when she said, "You left something for me," when life felt too heavy, his eyes filled. And for the first time in months, Daniel Reyes smiled. To remember the twist coming, This isn't where the story ends. Word of what Daniel had done spread through the hospital staff, then the town, then further. The same veterans outreach page that had once quietly funded his gift now flooded with new donations. This time for him. Enough to get him proper housing. Enough to get him the surgery he'd been told he couldn't afford. Enough, finally, to stop him from disappearing into the cracks the world had left open. Marlene used part of that original bag of money to fix her water heater and refill her son's prescription. But she saved the rest, every dollar, and put it toward something new. A small fund at the hospital, quietly passed to anyone who showed up broken and alone, the way Daniel once had. She never signed her name to it either. Some kindness doesn't ask to be remembered. It just asks to be passed on. If the story reminded you that a single act of compassion can outlive the moment it happened in, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you believe there are still Daniels and Marlenes quietly changing each other's lives in the dark, subscribe for more stories like this one. Because somewhere out there, another storm is just beginning, and another stranger is about to be someone's answered prayer.